So what is your parenting style? When my son Jack was 4 years old, we went to the supermarket together. As we walked up and down the aisles, I bumped into 2 different friends, had a conversation with each of them, and organised 2 future coffee dates. Then I saw a woman looking lost and offered her help. Next, I directed that person to the correct aisle for the item she needed, and then I helped a little old lady get a can of soup from a high shelf. Jack sat patiently waiting in the trolley in silence, observing my social and emotional behaviour. I was on fire. So many new and old friends. I was chatting to the shop assistant at the checkout when he reached over and held my face in his 2 little hands. He looked at me in the eyes and said, "Mummy, can you not talk to anyone else?" Oh, the life of the introverted son with the extroverted mother. But I was lucky to have a son who not only understood what was happening, but could verbalise his feelings, something that as an extrovert I was able to model for him. I understood at once that he needed some downtime with me. "Certainly," I said. We went and bought an ice cream each and sat down together and ate our ice creams, just the 2 of us. He was happy. I was all his. As I've previously mentioned, knowing about your own personality type and temperament and those around you can help you to understand your child or children and parent them appropriately. Today we will be looking at 4 different parenting styles currently used in child psychology. They're the following. Number 1, authoritative or supportive. Number 2, authoritarian. Number 3, permissive. And number 4, disengaged or uninvolved or neglectful. In recent years, a 5th dimension of these styles has been introduced. This one is labelled the overinvolved parents. This style refers to parents who are present in every aspect of their child's life. They are also known as snowplow or helicopter parents. So which one or combination of these parenting styles might you be? We will be discussing this today. Keep in mind that we don't all have just one style necessarily and can sometimes revert to each of these styles. Maryann Lomax is my special guest today in this first of 3 episodes with her. Along the way we're going to talk about resilience, managing through childhood tantrums, and today we're discussing parenting styles. Maryann's personality type is ENFJ. An ENFJ is a person with extroverted, intuitive, feeling and judging personality traits. These warm, forthright types love helping others and they tend to have very strong ideas and values. They back their perspective with creative energy in order to achieve their goals. Not only is Maryann an amazing woman who's achieved so much in her life, but she's also an exceptional teacher whose love and understanding of children is second to none. Maryann has had a diverse career. She's a teacher, a television presenter, a producer and an author. She headed up a transdisciplinary team of specialists such as speech pathologists, occupational therapists and physiotherapists. She also set up and ran a speech and language centre. She was the inaugural director of an early childhood learning centre for 26 years. Phew! She then retired for a very short time, and she's since returned to work with children with special rights and adaptations to the curriculum. She's the proud mum of 2 beautiful children and 3 amazing grandchildren, and one of my very dearest friends. Hi Maryann, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, hi Kate, it's good to be here. Been looking forward to doing this for a while now, haven't we?
We have. It's so great to have you with me. You've had many, many years of experience working with both children and parents. Today we're going to discuss the 5 different styles of parenting currently recognised by psychologists worldwide. Again, here they are: authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, disengaged, and helicopter, of which I'm sure there's a lot of me sitting in there. Now, what value is it to know and identify these parenting styles?
Well, I guess in many ways it doesn't really matter if you know your parenting style or not, if things are working for you. I think if you're parenting and the children are not responding to the way that you would like them to, then you need to reflect on what you're doing. I guess that's the most important thing, and knowing what your values are and whether the child is living those values out. And if they're meeting your needs and you're meeting their needs.
So as a parent, how are we going to work out what kind of parenting style that you have? So if you could give us a quick breakdown of what they look like, because as a parent, we are often just muddling along in our own way that we possibly can. And sometimes we're not able to pick out and go, oh, look, I'm that type of parent or whatever. So how can you give us a breakdown of those?
You know, I think sometimes it's great to go to a supermarket or shopping mall and sit there and watch what happens with parents and children, and you pretty well can find out what sort of parenting style is going on with them. The one that sits there and tells their child how the world is supposed to be, that is totally disengaged with their child as far as the child's needs and wants go, would probably be the authoritative parent. They want it their way, no matter what. They do love their children, but I think the ultimate is that child gets what that parent wants. Unfortunately, these kids grow up to be children that possibly can't make their own decisions, that they look to others to make decisions for them as their parents did. And you can imagine how that plays out in teenage lives. Would you like this drug? Oh, I think that's probably a good idea. Can't think for myself. So while I think the authoritative parent is doing the right thing for them, I don't know if they realise the impact they have on other children, on their own children.
Yes.
The authoritarian parent, which sounds similar but it's not, is someone who is there for their children and they are disciplined. But the difference is they listen to their children, they care for them. The children have a say in how they do things. They let them fall when they'd probably like to save them. They spend quality time with them, whether that be in the family or going to their sport, or it's kind of almost an equal relationship in the sense of rights and responsibilities, and they act it out and they enforce that in their own lives. The permissive parent is someone who always loves their children, but they're not that fantastic on following through with boundaries. So they might say, like, well, if you want to go outside and have a play in the rain, that's okay. You might then realise the great potential that rain brings to the soul. Meanwhile, the child comes in totally wet and saturated and has cold. I know there's no truth in that fact. But so they love them, but they don't give them much guidance. And again, this will affect children later on in life because they will find it difficult to march to the beat of someone else's rules. And the disengaged parent, that's different again. That's the parent who really is absent, that for whatever reason, and sometimes it's very good reasons, sometimes people just have to work that hard that they can't necessarily be in their children's lives as much as they would like to. But I guess for those parents, and I've had parents say that to me, what I say is, why don't you make some quality time? It doesn't have to be an hour. It doesn't have to be half a day. Even if it's just 20 minutes or 10 minutes a night that is your child and your time together, and nothing interrupts that. And you do that every day, and that is something. And the helicopter and snowplow parent is someone who literally does not let their child learn for themselves. They don't let them fall in the guidance of their arms. So they will go in and rescue. And what that leads to ultimately is that child never grows up emotionally or physically or probably even intellectually, definitely not spiritually.
Fantastic. And it does, all of those parenting styles have their advantages and their disadvantages, don't they?
They do.
So what is supposed to be the most beneficial style out of all of those?
Well, I think we touched on that earlier. I think it's the authoritative parent that can be there for their child, that listens to them, that when the child doesn't know what to do, they will guide them without necessarily telling them. And look, this is hard. I would always hope that was the sort of parent I was. But when you're tired, when you've been at work all day, when you, in my case, finances weren't that great or whatever, it's not always easy to be that. So forgive yourself if you can't be that. just aim to be there for your child in every way you can.
I always say that about parenting. No one really writes a rule book, and you don't know who you're parenting and where you're coming from at the time. It does make it really, really tricky. Now, a lot of the time we mix these styles up. Look, sometimes I can be quite authoritarian and the perfect parent and do things, and then other times I'm quite permissive. It depends on the situation I'm in. Let them go and just do their own thing because things are too overwhelming. And very often, unfortunately, in this day and age, a helicopter parent. I mean, I grew up in the times when my children grew up with me in the times where the helicopter parent had just started. And I am aware, very aware, that even now as my children are adult children, I tend to helicopter quite a bit. So
I think we all do, Kate. I don't think that's... I think as they get older too, you know, the world has become a harder place, a much harder place, you know, for teenagers with all the socials around. For us, even coronavirus has given us some sort of fear around our children. And when we're fearful around our children, what do we want to do? We want to rescue them.
Yes.
So
yeah, we want to protect them.
That should be another area. We should have rescue parents.
We should. Like have little bowls of little things around their neck of things. What is it when they're in the snow and those rescue dogs come out? A little bit of alcohol.
Says you and I who don't drink. But never mind.
We'll just pop that one in there. So as parents, how can we modify our behaviours, you know, in that knowing that we're not perfect, how do we actually detect those behaviours in ourselves? I mean, I'm pretty self-aware, so I guess I know when I'm doing the supposedly right or wrong thing with my children. But if you're a person caught up in the midst of parenting and you know you're going wrong, how do you pick and then change the thing? Have you got any examples of how you could actually...
Well, I was just thinking of something last night. My daughter is unwell at the moment, and she's looking after her daughter, my granddaughter, and they were learning some knitting. So she was trying to teach my granddaughter some knitting, and meanwhile I had called on the phone, and so the knitting needle went near the eye, and she went over and said, "You do that again and they have to go away." And of course it happened again. So she took the knitting needles away, and my granddaughter ran to her room and said, "You are the worst parent in the whole world." And she said, "Yes, probably." And then anyway, she went on and said to me, "Oh my goodness, have I done the wrong thing?" I said, "No, that's exactly right." And she said, "It's so hard to be a good parent because you have to almost be mean." And I said, "Yeah, that's an interesting observation." She said, "It would have been easier for me to go, okay, but try not to get them into your eye." And she said, "And then what happens? I end up in the emergency room, of which I can't go because I'm sick." So I think what you need to do is keep saying to yourself, I'm doing the best I can, but also what is the best for my child long term, when they're an adult or when they're a teenager.
Yes. Yeah. So I can remember too, when you say that, my daughter in her teen years used to go to a party and then she'd call me up when it was time to come home, and I would go and I'd sit in the car and I would wait, and she would say, "Be there at 11," and she'd text me and say, "I'm just going to be a little bit longer, I'm just going to be a little bit longer," and I would sit out there and wait like a fool for another hour, sometimes sitting in the car sending these desperate text messages to her. And then one day I had an epiphany. I spoke to my son, who's a very strong J and very organised and structured, and he said, "I don't know why you sit in the car, Mum, and let her do that to you. Go in there and get her." Now, I'm thinking that I'm actually not strong enough to do that. So the next time I spoke to Cass, I said, "Look, I just want you to know that tonight when I come to pick you up, I'm bringing Dad. And if you don't come out when I text you, he's coming in to get you." So the same thing happened. I went to pick her up and I got the text, "I'm going to be 5 minutes late." And I said to Paul, "This is it. Let's do it." So I sent a text and I said to her, "Dad's on his way in." And she was out like a flash. Never seen anyone move that fast. So it was really well worth the effort to try to make sure something like that happened. And ever after, I would just say to her, "Would you like me to bring Dad tonight?" Threatening though that was, she was always out of that party on time. So sometimes you do have to make those stands and do those things as parents, and you feel like you're being horrible and you feel like you're being mean. But it's not always. It's not so, because when they do have boundaries, they actually do like boundaries, don't they?
And it's interesting that you and Paul, although you are similar in your parenting style, you're different, and that you can lean on each other when you know that you maybe not are as authoritative as perhaps Paul is.
Yes.
So I think that's really good. It's a good takeaway. Yeah.
It is. And the thing is that, in parenting, like you say, can't get it right all the time, but they do love boundaries. You know, my son has said to me, and so has my daughter before, "Oh, could you please tell me that I can't go out tonight?" And I look at them and go, "Why is that?" And they say, "Because I really don't want to go, and it's really quite a stressful situation." So I just look at them and go, "You can't go out tonight?" "Oh, great." So sometimes they need that. You know, it's really important for them. So what's a call to action that we can have for our parenting styles? You know, what's something that we need to do that's concrete, time-sensitive, and that we can actually do ourselves?
Well, I think we've almost covered some of it. I think it's when something's not working for you. I know a parent at the moment whose child is not going to bed on time. How many times have we heard that? And I said, "Well, how late is it?" She said, 10 or 11. And I said, "At night?"
Oh, my goodness.
She said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, so tell me about what the routine is." And she went through the routine. You know, she bathed her, she got her to bed, she read a book, she said goodnight. And then she said, "I'd go back and do some stuff." And she said she'd bound out. And I said, "And then what would you do?" And she said, "I'd take her back." And I'd say, "You have to stay here." And we went through this. And I said, "But what are the consequences for her when she doesn't go to sleep?" She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, you're telling her she has to go to bed, but what happens when she doesn't go to bed is you're giving her more attention, aren't you?" "Oh." She said, "So what should I say?" Well, I said, "I don't know. That's up to you to determine between you and your daughter. But you could possibly say, right, tomorrow night we'll only have 10 minutes of story instead of 15. This is your choice," because children like choice, but you need to have the overarching command, if you like. So she said, "Oh, I'll try that." And, of course, she rang me about a week later. She said, "Oh, my goodness, this thing works." So just a thing about what you're doing, and if it's not meeting, you think, the needs of your child, look at how you're parenting and what are you doing about the ultimate consequences.
So can I ask you a quick question about choice? Because my son went with Maryann in the ELC, and Maryann was great about giving choices until one day Jack said to me, "You have a choice, Mum. We go ice skating, to the movies, or we go to the park." And they were all really good choices. There was no decision really to be made. They were all fun, so I had to make a choice.
No, Kate, you didn't have to make a choice.
So how many choices do you give, and what do they offer, the choices? You know, because you're trying to bring about something that has a consequence. So what kind of choices?
Okay, so it's a little bit of organisational thought here. So if you want your child to go to bed, or if you want them, I don't know, do you remember what you were asking,
I can't.
Jack?
No,
okay.
yeah.
Then you say, you have to go to bed, right? So you're commanding that, but you can have a choice around these two things. So say you were saying we're going to go out and you're only going to get off the movies. We are going to the movies, Jack, but you can choose whether we see Spider-Man or I don't know, whatever.
Yep.
And you can choose whether you have popcorn or Chop Top. They're your choices. So in other words, you're still getting your want for them to go to the movies. But Jack's also getting something out of it as well. So the important thing is you really are implementing that.
And when you say, like we talk about too, making them reinforceable and also making them real. I had a parent of my daughter's, when her daughter had been caught using the phone when she shouldn't have been, she took the phone away for 3 months. And of course, on about week 2, she gave it back because it wasn't a realistic withdrawal of something, whereas you keep it workable as well when you're doing things with your children. You know, 24 hours might have been more appropriate and she would have missed her phone. Sometimes we make too big a punishment, a thing that putting out what we're going to do when we're trying to reinforce stuff, and we can't actually stick to it.
Absolutely. And you've got to save those big ones for the big ones. I mean, if your child has done something really bad, and we all know where that can go, then you've got to have the punishment that is equal punishment. You've got to have the consequence that's equal to that. But yes, I too have heard that, and it's like, you won't do that. And therefore the child knows. The child knows,
yes.
And that behaviour is reinforced. Don't forget that. Every time you don't get the outcome that you want as a parent, that child is reinforced in the way their behaviour is. And so it escalates.
It's so true. So really, pick your battles.
Pick your
That's
battles.
the way to do it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your wisdom and experience.
Absolute
they are
pleasure.
Gold. Now, do you have one thing to take away that we might be able to share at all?
Be the best person you can be. Forgive yourself if you're not that person on that day, and wake up and try again tomorrow.
Beautiful. Thank you. The one thing I want you to take away from today is that there are many different styles of parenting. We don't all have just one style and can sometimes revert to each of these styles. Knowing and understanding who you are as a parent will give you a strong foundation in preparation for the trials and the triumphs of parenthood. I'm Kate Mason. Thank you for listening to Personalities, Parenting and Partners. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you leave a rating and a review that would help others learn about this podcast. If you're interested in discovering more about you and your family's personality types, you'll find my newly launched book, Who Is This Monster or Treasure in My House, on Booktopia or Amazon. If you have an episode idea, please send a note to thepersonalitycoach@gmail.com. Many thanks to our producers at Stories and Strategies. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.